weird room. I don't know about you, but when I teach, I don't normally stand on a podium and look down on my students. But I have to stand here because we have a virtual audience today for a hybrid session. So I need to be on camera for my virtual folks, hello, and I need to be in front of the mic. So I just feel a little strange. So I just wanted to say hi to you like a human instead of some whatever this weird presentation is. So thank you for joining us for our session. Here's our title for the day, Multidisciplinary Instruction, How to Maximize Your Teaching Time. So I'm Anita Kerr. I'm from Illinois, and it's nice to see you all. I have been in professional development for about 9 years now. And before that, I was in adult education in a local program in Illinois at a community college as a teacher, as a coordinator, as a volunteer literacy tutor coordinator. I've kind of done a little bit of everything. And now I still teach part-time for that same community college for GED prep. So I'm very happy to have you. I'm hopefully going to learn a little bit about you here in a minute as well. I want to tell you before we get started that for those of you who like to take notes and you're wanting to take pictures of the screen, just know two things: that all of the slides are uploaded into the WIOA app, so you can go download my slides yourself and have them later for reference. Also, this Multitasking Teachers bit.ly link, you can go there and there are a bunch of resources on there. So a lot of the things I'm going to talk about or show you, you can go get them later at your convenience from your desktop and so forth. So feel free to have that ready to go and use it later. So feel free to just sit back and relax and not feel like you have to take any notes, because this is going to be a casual conversation today. So a reminder for those of you, if you're out there in virtual world and you're in the WIOA app, remember please to use the chat feature that is within WIOA, not the chat in Zoom, because Amber, my lovely colleague and friend from Illinois, will not be able to see you chat unless you're in the WIOA chat, which is on the right-hand side of your Zoom. And you in the room, for accommodating our virtual attendees, if you want to have a comment to say or you have a question to ask, if it's long, let's ask Amber to bring you the mic, please. If it's a quick thing, say it out and I'll repeat it, okay, for the sake of our virtuals. So, are we ready to start? Okay, so the ready to start part is with you. What's your role? So just quickly, I want to just know by hands here in the room, and you can mention in the chat, whoever you are there, what your role is at your program or in your agency. So how many of you in the room are teachers? Classroom teachers? Okay, fantastic. How many of you in the room are support staff / coordinator, some sort of role like that? I see you. Any administrators? Okay, perfect. Transitions folks, like in bridge, IETs, that sort of role? I see you. Any PD people in the room? Oh my gosh, this is wonderful. Okay. How about other? I'm usually other. I have to check the box for other because I don't usually put PD people on there. Do I have others that we missed? Okay. And in the chat, feel free to mention what your role is so we kind of know who's in the room. Thank you for doing that. And some of us wear multiple hats. I recognize that too. I just want to say as we kick off that many of the things we're going to discuss today, for those of you who are not in the classroom currently, but you, I'm sure in your role, you support teachers. So this is what we're learning today can be used to support teachers. So feel free to share. Okay, so as we get started, I want to share with you something that a friend of mine from a former job, her name is Pat, we were preparing some PD for our local program once, and she said to me, can we just stop for a second? Before we make this giant agenda, I want to just acknowledge that teachers are feeling a little overwhelmed. And this was several years ago, but I appreciated her suggestion, which was let's be careful about our agenda and how much we're adding to the strain and stress load on our teachers. And she just wanted to use it as kind of a reflection moment for us, which I appreciated. You are being asked to do a lot when you're in an adult education classroom. Here's just, a handful of things that we're asking them to do. We're prepping for HSE exams and or other kinds of exams in the transition bridge world. We're working on college career readiness concepts, and in the English language classrooms, we're working on those ELPs. We're teaching to content standards. We're using evidence-based practices. We're trying to teach technology and digital literacy resilience. And we're trying to get our students to make a level gain because that's what our programs are reminding us we need to do. So we don't approach this topic of multidisciplinary content very lightly. I approach it from the perspective of, I understand what it feels like to be a little overloaded. And so if that's you today, welcome, and welcome to the rest of us. I think we're all kind of in this same world. So don't be, I hope that you feel a part of a community where we all are learning to deal with all of our initiatives that are being asked of us. So here's the problem. When we're being asked to do many, many, many things at one time, the research also tells us that we are terrible multitaskers. Humans do not multitask very well. So you may be, I'll just be curious, and is anybody in here bold enough or online bold enough to say, I think I'm a great multitasker. I don't care what that evidence on your screen says. Okay, fabulous. I love you. I love your honesty. I already knew I loved you, but I love all of you too now. So when we have this difference between multitasking, the research says we're bad at it, but many of us feel like we do it on a daily basis. So let's find out what the research says, and then we're gonna make a distinction, okay? So here's what the research tells us. It affects our productivity in a negative way. So that's what all of this is saying to us. Stanford, APA, Fortune Magazine, Harvard Business Review, all of it. Productivity drops, and if you'll notice a couple of things here from the Fortune Magazine one, it talks about we cause mistakes when we try to multitask. That may be something you can relate to when you're trying to balance multiple things, errors start to creep in. So for those of you who say, yeah, you know what, I am a good multitasker, I don't really care what this research says, can you give me a reason or an example of how you know that you're multitasking well and how it contradicts this? Just curious if anybody wants to share.
Now they're not making eye contact in the room because they're like,
don't
no,
you dare.
it wasn't me. I didn't
Go to
raise
the
my
back.
hands.
And this is a huge room, so sorry, Amber, I hope you have good shoes on.
I am glad I changed them this morning.
Because we have to constantly stop what we're doing and then go back to that for the interruptions.
Ah,
Whether it's student paperwork, just a random fly in the mix.
there you go. So she said a very key word, which is not just interruptions, that is a real thing, but she also said we have to switch. We have to switch. When we get interrupted, we're switching. So here's the thing, if you think, you know, I actually do multitask pretty well, what you're actually not multitasking. You're not doing two things at the exact same time with your brain. Actually, you're switching very fast between two things. Now, that could be a skill that you have. Amber has that skill. So she's not technically multitasking, but that's our shorthand way. What she's actually doing is what we call switch tasking. So there's this, I'm gonna forget his name now that I've said it here. I think his name is Dave Crenshaw. Yeah, you can Google him, you can YouTube him. Unfortunately, this computer that's all hooked up for everything fancy won't let me log into my YouTube and it won't let me show you a video. So we're gonna do our experiment together, but I got it from him, okay, Dave Crenshaw. And his books are about this idea of switch tasking, that you're actually just moving back and forth really fast between two things when you think you're multitasking. Now, are you good at it? Probably. But it does alleviate, our brain moves from one thing to the next, and it does decrease productivity and increase error. So we're gonna do a little experiment to make that visible to us, okay? So, Amber, would you, I'm sorry, you run all over the place. What we're gonna do, yeah, you could have all sat in 2 rows, but that would have been too easy on Amber. At home, if you're virtual, you just need a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. Here in the room, you need the back of that piece of paper that Amber just gave you, which is your handout for the day, and a pen or a pencil. What I would love for you to do is to participate in this, even if you're a little like, oh, come on, lady, you know, I'm tired, I don't wanna engage. Try it out, because I do think this is an activity that you might enjoy doing with your students, because it's a nice hands-on piece of evidence. For those of you online, the WIOA app also has an upload of the handout that we are using today. if you want to take a look at that. But for this experiment, you just need a blank sheet of paper, a pen or a pencil, okay? So if Dave Crenshaw were here, he would have reminded us that we're not technically doing two things at once. We're switching back and forth between them fast. And as a way to experiment, we're going to do an activity. So what I want you to do is on your sheet, you have to follow directions. I'm so sorry, but I'm going to ask you to follow my directions very carefully. You see this sheet of paper on my screen has 3 lines that are kind of evenly spaced horizontally. Draw those 3 lines. Draw those 3 lines, and then only on the top line, write the phrase, switch tasking is a thief. Do not write the numbers. How's that for clear instructions? I'll try it one more time. 3 lines, yes, draw those. Switch tasking is a thief, write that. Do not write the numbers. Okay? So your paper, once you have that down, what we're going to do is I'm going to actually start a timer here, and I'm going to give you a task, and I'm going to call out the time at 5-second intervals. When you finish my task, I want you to estimate about how many seconds it took you based on my call out, okay? It doesn't have to be exact, but give it a rough go. Your task for this first go round is to write the numbers 1 through 21, 1 for each letter of the phrase in switch tasking is a thief. Understood? So underneath the S, you're going to draw a 1. Under the W, a 2, etc. So you've already written the phrase. Now all you're going to do is number each of them. Okay? So that's your task. I'm going to call out the intervals. When you're done, you estimate how many seconds it took you. Okay? Ready? You're going to start writing your numbers. Go. Five. 10. 15. 20. 25. 30. 35. 40. All right. End of task 1, okay? You don't have to share your time with anybody, but guess what? Your next task, a little more challenging. See that space there on the next line? You're gonna, not yet, but when I say go, you're gonna write an S and then a 1. W and then a 2, right? 1 letter, 1 number that corresponds. And you're gonna do that as you go, okay? And again, I'm gonna call out 5-second intervals. You estimate about how long it takes for you to get to the end, and then we'll check in with each other, okay? So you're gonna write 1 letter of the phrase and the corresponding number, letter, number, all the way to the end, okay? Ready? Go. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. And Dave, not very kindly in this video at the end of that, he says, and if you're not done now, too bad. You took too long. So, asking you 2 quick questions. Did your second task take longer than your first task? Yes, I'm seeing lots of head. Okay. Second question, with honesty, does your second set of numbers look prettier or uglier than your first set of numbers? Ooh, same. Did your handwriting go, ooh, did it drop? Like, you know what I mean? It's not straight anymore, it went down, or maybe your numbers got messy. Did anybody make a mistake in there? Oh, perfect. Oh, you guys, I could have paid you to come and say that.
Online agrees. They made a mistake. They were sloppier. Yes, it took them longer.
Perfect. Yes. So we've got somebody who's, I can't even remember what I was supposed to be doing. Letter, number, yeah. Yeah. Now, this is not in any way, this activity, to denigrate those of you who are really good switch taskers, because you have developed that skill, I'm sure, in your profession. To your point in the back, I can answer an email, my phone rings, I quickly answer that, I get back to my email. We're good at it. Our students maybe are not as good at it, and also we have to develop that skill. So this is not a way to denigrate and say you're not a good switch tasker. It's just a reminder that when we're doing that back and forth, we are losing productivity and we are increasing the number of errors. So the idea behind this is we don't want to be multitasking when we teach with our students. We don't want to be bouncing back and forth between ideas with them. What we want to be is really, really, really good multidisciplinary planners at the outset, so that every lesson we have is kind of this nice integrated set of skills, not bouncing from skill to skill and text to text, okay? So we want to aim to be multidisciplinary planners. This will make things more effective for our students and, honestly, more effective and efficient for ourselves, which is one of our goals. So here's one of the things that pushes back against us when we try to be good multidisciplinary teachers, is that a lot of our very wonderful publishers in adult ed who publish some great textbooks for us, they tend to publish texts that are by skill. And so we tend to structure our courses and our lessons based on isolated skills. So I have language arts curriculum, and I have a language arts textbook, and then I have my social studies material, and I teach math in a separate class altogether, maybe, at my program. Workplace and career readiness, tech skills, how are we embedding those in our instruction? All of those are questions that we might need to ask ourselves. This is what we call the silo approach to organizing content, right? Every subject by itself. And those textbooks that I mentioned, they lend themselves to this, unfortunately. There's wonderful content here, but you can see that we do inferences by itself, then a brand new text, and now we're on main ideas, and then a brand new text, and now we're on comparison contrast. You get the idea? This is not a good use of class time, by the way, when I have to have my students continually reading new texts every single time I want to bring up a different skill. So this is one of the ways that we can plan, is identify some really good resource materials and some really good text and reading passages that we can do more than one thing with, okay? So this is our goal. Here's just another example and a little bit more close-up of how this siloing approach can happen. The other thing that happens is this is a literature book, an informational text book. There's nothing in here about teaching digital literacy skills, workplace career awareness, and yet we are obligated to teach these things as part of our WIOA requirements. So we're missing some pieces to be good multi-planners when we just rely on our curriculum. So here's a different approach. This is planning by theme, planning by concept, planning around multiple skills. So this is just one graphic way to think about it. If your brain wants to set it up differently, draw it out, that's totally fine. But the idea would be that I could do multiple things at a time. I can be teaching English language skills, and I can be teaching workplace readiness, and I can slide some technology in there at the same time. And I should be doing that for a very good reason. Okay, so if this graphic, again, this image, is not the way you picture multidisciplinary, I would encourage you to sketch it out in a way that makes sense to you. But this is the idea, as opposed to silo. We organize by concept or by theme or by multiple skills. So why does that matter? Why is it beneficial? Here are a couple of my ideas. You may have other ideas about why teaching this way is beneficial. Here's a couple quick ones. Help students make meaningful connections between what they're learning. Quality time on task. Preach it, right? I love quality time on task activities so that I can be more efficient. How many of you wish you had your students with you longer than you get them? Yeah. I desperately wish I could have my students for more hours and for longer periods of time, but we don't get them, so we have to really make use of our time well. Another benefit is communication. When you get students exploring a theme or a concept and you get them talking about it, we've got speaking and listening skills being activated, critical thinking skills, all of that. And then this issue of authenticity. I don't think anybody in here would argue that when you cross-curricularly instruct and plan, you've got some more realistic learning happening. It's more authentic, which is really what problem solving in the real world looks like. So I'll give you an example, not even from my adult ed world, but actually my daughter is taking an early childhood education course at our local community college. It's an online class, and it's her first college class. So she's learning how to use Canvas, the learning management system. So there are all kinds of digital skills being used at this point in her life. She had one assignment the other day. It was to read an article about brain development in children. So it's a very science-oriented topic, but she was reading text. So you already see a couple of skills floating around here. She was required to take notes as she wrote and submit them, highlighting what she wanted to highlight, etc. Then she had to put some discussion posts into Canvas and dialogue with her colleagues, her classmates. And then she had to go into a classroom of some kind where there were children and read to them and make notes about the way they responded to the reading activity. So there was this hands-on piece in the classroom, God bless you, that she was able to participate in. No problem. That is an excellent example, my daughter's activity at her early childhood course, of an authentic experience that had lots of connections between lots of different things. And we always want to make sure that we're doing that for our students too. Just sometimes our materials don't do that for us. So we have to bring ourselves to bear. So if any of those benefits sounded really familiar, you might have been thinking, well, yeah, doesn't that just sound like good andragogy? Good adult ed teaching learning theory? Yes, it is. That's exactly what it is. So what do we learn from adult learning theory? Students who are adults need to be self-directed at least a little bit and have a say in the content and process of their learning. Here's a huge one. You guys know this one. Even if you didn't know it was one of the tenets of andragogy, you know this. Students need to know that they can draw on what they've already experienced and bring it to bear on our adult ed classroom. Students want practical learning. They need to see how this connects to my life. So we've all been in the classroom where the students have said, why are you teaching me this? Why do I have to learn this? And honestly, sometimes the answer is because it's on the GED test. And that's sometimes sufficient, but honestly, we can probably do better in drawing the connection between why it matters to something in their personal life or their work life or their future work life. And we don't want to ask our students to be memorizing a bunch of content. We want them to be solving problems. So this is what adult learning theory tells us. So when we talk about planning in a multidisciplinary way, we're really just talking about really good adult education quality instruction. So this is a fast plug for the college and career readiness standards. And if you're an English language teacher, ELA, ESL, whatever you call it in your state, the ELPs. You should have a copy. You should have access to them. The CCRs are bookmarked in my slides. You should be teaching to the quality and the rigor of the standards so that student work is there. So one of those standards is here. This is a language arts standards from the ABE ASE world. This is College and Career Readiness Anchor Standard 8. Delineate and evaluate the argument and specific claims in a text. That's the key part of the standard. And we're also looking at the reasoning, relevance, and sufficiency of the evidence. Okay, so I want you to absorb that standard for a second. And I want you to imagine that you're presenting an activity. You're going to design something and have your students do it. And it's going to look like the silo approach. Are you ready? You pick an article. You have your students read it, find one of the claims, provide some of the evidence that supports the claim, write it out, and give it back to me. Does this sound familiar? I mean, this is pretty typical, right? There's nothing wrong with this. It would probably achieve the standard. So, but we're going to brainstorm something better, okay? So on your handout, on the side that doesn't have your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 switch tasking activity, you should have a picture of that conceptual design of thinking of all the different things we could be teaching. And if you're trying to get students to delineate an argument and analyze the evidence, that's our standard, remember. It's there on your handout. What I would love for you to do is to brainstorm, just like our little gentleman here in the hat makes me happy. What could we brainstorm in that activity that's not quite so siloed? Can we do multiple things when we're achieving that one standard? So what I want you to do is to brainstorm, how can we get from that standard and that silo approach to embedding a bunch of other things? So maybe aim for three additional skills or content areas, and not only which ones you're going to embed in your activity, but how are you going to embed it? So just sketch out your idea. Feel free to turn and talk to someone near you if that's your style and you want to talk it out. But I'll give you just a minute to think, and then we'll share out some of our ideas of how to embed multiple skills and concepts into our one activity.
For those that are online, I've just put a link in the chat to a shared document that we can all brainstorm together on, and then we'll be sure to share those in the room with the people here.
It's totally okay if you're not finished with your activity idea. Remember, this is just kind of a brainstorm, so it doesn't have to be complete or perfect. It just needs to be sketched out a little. So Anybody willing to share either their full activity idea or maybe one or two of the things they want to embed into this standard activity? Yes, ma'am. She's going to bring you the mic. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So I said we can make this relevant to social studies. So depending on the article, we can potentially do a compare and contrast of history. So what is this? Depending on the article, you can say, hey, let's look at this and see how this relates to present, and can we find how this relates to the past, because history repeats itself. And that'll give students an idea of you're knocking out both English and social studies, and then the soft skills, digital literacy, have them using that technology piece, creating some sort of visual presentation, either in Canva or Google Docs or whatever platform that you choose to use.
Excellent. I love
Nicely
that.
done.
We were just talking about Canva and how lovely it is to create visuals in Canva. So what I love about that was, you were presenting it, it was kind of like, of course you can do social studies. You could compare, contrast. Now we have another skill being brought in. And then digital literacy, of course, that's when they're producing what they've learned. So I just love kind of the facility with which you reeled that off, like, well, yeah, I would do that. And if you are thinking to yourself, like, yeah, I would do that, that's quality instruction. So you can say, good for me, I do know how to do this. It's just that sometimes the way our programs are established, reading happens in this room, math happens in this room or at this time, and our textbooks tend to divvy everything out. But we can very easily, as you pointed out, overlap some things. Do we have any more, Amber?
Someone in the chat said almost identically what you said just a second ago, just saying that social studies, read one or more articles with opposing views on a historical issue. Anonymous Jackal, that's in there. And then there's someone else who's still they're still writing. So we'll update you as
Yeah.
it goes.
Did anybody have anything maybe significantly different than that or brought in a different skill? Yeah, please.
So I think it's actually pretty easy to tie all of these things in. As a literacy teacher, I would often pull things like lab reports for something a bit more controversial. So thinking animal testing, something like that, and having them evaluate not just the lab itself, but the numbers, why were they added or included, and whether or not those arguments were reasonable. And you can pull in the history from that point too, and do a whole bunch of different activities. It's going to turn into more of a unit than a single lesson, but definitely can tie everything in just from that one structural piece.
Yeah, and because you're going with a lab report that has data with it, there's the math, the graphing or charts or whatever you want them to create, all kinds of graphic literacy things we could go to as well. So I love that approach. That's a wonderful example. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm not sure if I set it up exactly right, but this is the best I can do. Okay, so I have a lot of students that come in now. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Everybody wants, I want to start my own business. I want to be an entrepreneur. What are you selling? Who are you targeting? So I said that a language writing, because I will have them to simulate introducing an idea to a company or a panel, which can be the other students. And they can incorporate math to say, okay, this is going to be my startup cost. And then they also have to do some writing to show or give the information so that they can, kind of make us buy in.
First of all, I love the idea of saying, what do my students express interest in, and can I craft an activity around their interests? That is the andragogy piece about making it relevant. So I love that. The other thing I will say about yours is actually then the reaching of the standard about hearing a claim and evaluating the evidence actually happens on the classroom side. It's not the person who's making the pitch. It would be all of you out there listening to my pitch who would be doing the standard. So I love the flip that you did there. That's a really creative way to think about it. Yes.
And to your point, you can also tie that into workplace readiness and career development. So with, the interviewing skills, you're having your students talk in front of their peers. So having them be comfortable learning how to do a sales pitch. If they want to be entrepreneurs, they want to be able to go and talk about their business in front of others. So you're getting that workplace, those career skills, that resume writing piece can come in as well, building a business plan and model.
Absolutely. And as our lady up here who had mentioned a minute ago, like it's going to turn into a unit if I add all this in, that's to your point, yes. And maybe you do want a unit and you do want to bring in all those career readiness things, but staying on one topic, because then your students are not switch tasking quite as much, right? They can kind of concentrate in on an area, a concept, a text passage, whatever it is, and you can really kind of spend some time and dive deep in there. And that contributes to their productivity and to the lack of error and all the other things we've learned about focus. So this is another benefit, not just for us as planners, but for our students when we're not bouncing back and forth so quickly between topics. You settle in on something kind of deeply like that. It's a wonderful way to help our students focus. Okay. Well, first of all, you did great on that. So I'm going to throw my example up here, but you don't even need it. This is one of those things that a trainer does just in case the audience is completely silent and says nothing. Then I can go, well, here's an example. But you don't even need my example. But I'll throw it up there just because instead of going social studies or career readiness, I went science and said, hey, pick a science topic. Climate change was what I said, the causes of, because there's going to be some claims in those articles, right? And identify claims that have data attached to them. I was thinking very similarly about the lab report. Find something that has data, because then I can make some math problems out of that. Then have students put together a PowerPoint that defines their claims and ask them to present that PowerPoint out. There's the speaking, listening, soft skills, etc. So same ideas that you were having, but the idea being that I can take that one standard and I can accomplish 4 or 5 theme areas or skill areas and make it a more robust activity than maybe I had originally planned based on the textbook suggestion, for instance. Okay. So I'm going to give you one more because my friend Amber Forniseri is a math expert and I love her. I'm going to make this a very balanced presentation, and here is a math standard. And I'm going to ask you, some people may find this one more challenging if you are not a math teacher, but I bet you can do it. Can you identify 2 other content areas or skills that you could incorporate into a lesson on this math skill? And you're thinking, okay, what am I looking at? See the green arrow? Fluently multiply whole numbers and decimals. That's the skill you're trying to teach to your group. Fluently multiply whole numbers and decimals. Just quickly, can you think of what you might do to add in some other content to make it theme-based? Ooh, who said that? Yes, plan a party. So this is one of the greatest ideas because first of all, who doesn't love a party? But that's a relevant thing, right? It could be a real life situation. So then we have costs of all the items and how many people you're inviting. Yeah, love that idea. Thank you.
I love that idea. I had a student say she had such a hard time one time making goodie bags for her child's party and figuring out, well, this comes in a pack of 12 and this comes in a pack of 24 and this comes in a pack of 18, and how many do I need in order to make sure every kid gets one of each, right? That in itself is its own, and that comes with high stakes when you have young children.
If we want to make it more relevant to adults, think about it in terms of paying taxes or your personal wages, figuring out, well, if I make X amount of money, how much is the state sales tax? Tennessee is insane. So their sales tax is 9.25%. So how much am I really getting? What is my gross? What is my net?
Perfect. So you embed that whole skill into a financial literacy activity, and you could talk all day about that. Yes.
Actually, to really piggyback on that, I teach decimals, fractions, and percentages all at the same time to really just kind of reinforce that they're all the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah. And then that naturally goes into tax, tip, discount, things like that.
There you go.
To go back to your
Perfect. Yeah, in other words, things that they're doing literally the minute they leave your class when they run to Walmart or wherever. Yeah, perfect. That's right. So cooking, you can say who loves it, fractions, we can do all kinds of doubling and tripling of recipes, halving of recipes, and you can get that covered. Yes, sir.
So I was just going to say, you could build in self-efficacy and digital literacy by having them check their answers with a spreadsheet.
Woohoo! I heard Amber, even without the mic, she's going, yeah.
I love it when someone can integrate a spreadsheet because it can be a very complex thing, right? But you can, from its core, like just simple cells and simple formulas, you're already teaching those digital literacy skills that they might have to use even for a data entry position, right?
That's right.
So I love it when we can throw a spreadsheet in front of a student and teach them how to use it effectively and then incorporate the math.
And that is the kind of math that in many jobs, they will actually be seen on a regular basis is spreadsheet math. That's a lot of the math that I see. So I think that's a wonderful plan. Yeah. So first of all, great job. If you were nervous about doing this, you shouldn't be. You can do this. It takes just a little bit of time. And to your point about like the party planning, your students are going to do half the work for you. You can throw that idea out and let them think about all the things that need to be included, and then you can help lead them to the math and to the writing activities, et cetera. But a lot of the brainstorming can happen from your students. Yeah. I love this. Yeah. So she gamified the party proposals and had people from the administration come in and listen and have to choose the best one. That's a little bit of adding to the stakes, which I love. It's a great soft skill. So I wanted to just share this. If you're an English language teacher, you can take 1 second of mental break here, but if you're a GED or an ABE instructor, just know that there is a relationship across content areas document on the GED.com website. If you've never explored this before, it's under the teacher and educators and admin tab. If you dig around under there, you'll find it under the teaching resources, and it's called relationship across content areas. So educator tab, teaching resources tab, and then there's the title. That doc, you can see, guess what that standard is right there, that R8 standard? That's basically the standard we were just working with. And there you have it in social studies, science, and math, areas that you could walk over and steal some ideas from as you're doing your planning. There it is. So if you're one of those who maybe you're thinking, gosh, these people are really coming up with all these creative ideas fast, on their own, on the spot, I might need some more help, there you go. That's a great help, and you're helping your students who are prepping for this test because you're having them do more than one thing at a time. When you have them study for one test at a time, it does take longer that way. So if you can cross content, some areas and skills, you can get a lot more done. So don't want to spend any time on that doc. I just want you to know it's there as a resource. So if you're still thinking, well, okay, all this sounds pretty good, but I do a lot of that already, and I still wish I had more time. We're going to just talk extremely briefly about the flipped classroom model. And if you know a little bit about it and you're thinking, well, that's never going to work for me, what I want you to do, I want to challenge you to do, is to listen to this content and take away something that you might use of this model, even if you weren't going to adopt it whole hog, okay? So that's what our challenge is there some piece of this flipped classroom model that I can take and use, okay? So remember, all of these documents are in the Padlet resource that I shared with you. So you can download them and read them at your own kind of leisure. But here's the basic understanding of what a flipped classroom is. Traditional classroom is this, what I'm doing right here. I stand in front of you, I deliver content to you, and then I would send you home with some homework. That is kind of our traditional classroom. But a flipped classroom does it just the opposite. I front load some information to my students, usually through a digital format like a video, a recording of myself or a YouTube video, or maybe it's a packet of information that goes home with them. They read that. That is the content delivery. And then when you have them in class, you put them in circles or work tables and you have them do the homework together with you in the room. Instead of doing it off alone when they can't get help, you do the application piece or the homework piece right with you. So you don't have to spend multiple minutes delivering the content and squeezing in the application. You flip it and do the delivery up front, usually through a video. That's kind of the basic idea of a flipped classroom. Here are some of the benefits. Obviously, students are allowed to move a little bit more at their own pace through the delivery of the content, when they can pause a video, take notes, change the speed of the video, etc. It's definitely more self-directed. It honors diverse learning styles. It definitely encourages the group work and peer work, because during the application part, they're in the room with all of their peers and you working together to solve these problems instead of at home. And also, they're enabling exploration in a contextualized setting. So again, the application happens in the classroom where you can guide it. Now, flipped classroom has some barriers. One of them is about access. Not everybody has technology. Some people don't have a computer at home. Most of your students do have a phone, and so they can open a link from a WhatsApp and message and watch a video. So if they couldn't do that, you could say, hey, come in 10 minutes early and you can sit at my computer in the classroom and watch the video. There's public libraries available. So we can be a little creative if you make what's available to them in the flipped classroom model. If you make it as flexible as possible so they can watch it on a phone or read it on a phone, then you're usually in good shape in asking your students to participate in something like that. Here's the other barrier, is our students don't like to do homework. Anybody want to nod and say your students don't like to do homework in adult ed? Yeah. So guess what? My students at the college level don't like to do homework either, but it's expected of them. They go in knowing they're going to have homework. So here's the thing. You can change the expectation. You can say, in my classroom, you will be asked to watch a 15-minute video before you come to class. And then I'll do all the work with you, and I'll be here as a support when you're doing the application. If it's an expectation change for you, you could prep them, you could model it, you could walk them through it, you could do it slowly, but you can change the expectation and your students will adjust. If you're prepping them appropriately for college and career readiness, we should probably be doing something like this anyway. So you know your students best, but I just would encourage you to remind yourself that you're the expert in the room and you get to set the culture in your classroom as best you can. And that might be something you could consider in flipping your classroom a little bit. Okay, so remember the challenge? As you may be thinking, well, I'm not doing that every week. That's crazy. No, but could you do it occasionally? If you're thinking, well, I don't have time to create my own videos every week, that's fine. Can you find a YouTube video that already exists that covers the content you want and share that through WhatsApp or Remind or whatever? So remember, that was the challenge, not to take it whole, but to take a piece, okay? Here's one other quick reminder. When you're planning, I don't know if you have to use like lesson plans, like formal lesson plans, what you have to create with. Maybe you have a set curriculum, I don't know what you have, but if you are allowed to create your own materials, remember that sometimes having a template that kind of forces you to use multiple content areas, it expects you to use multiple content areas, is a really good reminder. So when you design something like a lesson plan, just go ahead and find a multidisciplinary lesson plan that automatically starts asking for which content areas are you covering, multiple. Both of the examples are in the Padlet if you're looking for one to download. All right, here's some good stuff. How many of you in the room and how many of you in the chat have ever heard of slow reveal graphs? Yes? Yes? Mm-hmm. Okay. This is one of my favorite kind of ready-made multidisciplinary activities. One of the things that jokingly, it's like as you come here, it's like you guys are juggling a lot of stuff. Let's try to make this better for us and our students. And then you're thinking, yeah, but lady, you're up there telling me I got to brainstorm all these different activities to add into my lessons. Here's one way you can do this, is use ones that are already made. Don't go make your own. Slow reveal graphs are amazing, and that link in my slide deck is live, as well as on the Padlet. It'll take you straight to the website. And you guys, there are tons and tons and tons of prepared slide decks. They're usually Google Slides, and they start with something that looks like that upper left-hand corner. Be a bar graph or some other kind of graph, a line graph, something, and it'll have very basic information on it. Maybe just the shapes and one number. And then every next slide that you uncover has a little bit more information on it. Maybe a couple more numbers, maybe a couple more of your chart. All of that is unveiling itself one slide at a time. And the idea is that as you go, you're asking your students things like, what do you notice about this chart so far? And I add a couple more pieces of information with a couple clicks of my slide deck, and then I say, something just got added. What can we predict about what this slide is about now? And now we're asking them to do some higher critical thinking skills. All of that will eventually unveil your final, full, complete graph, which happens to be here on the far right. It's called Not Everybody Loves Chocolate. You see what all of the bar graphs now, what they mean. You see all the numerics. You see each of them represents a country. And then we have all this other information about consumption per capita, revenue per capita. You guys, I don't know about you, but I see math and science lesson written all over this as I'm preparing my students for the GED. So all of this is already built, and you literally have to go onto the website, find a topic that you like, make a copy of the slide. It'll force you to make a copy of the slide deck, save it to your device, off you go. They're wonderful. And it does allow students to do a lot of prediction and a lot of thinking and talking. So I had one the other day. It was about what is the most commonly eaten pie flavor in each state. And they didn't know that it was about pie, obviously. It just had a map of the states, and it had some colors on the map. And then some numbers started showing up on the map. And never did we see anything about the word pie until the very last slide. And it was fun to watch my students try to guess what it was talking about. And it was fun how they got close to about the purpose of the chart and the map before they even knew what it was all about. So there's all kinds of information you can do with slow reveal graphs. So hope you try that one. Here are two more suggestions. Ready-made. New York Times, what's going on in this graph? What's going on in this picture? Have you used this? Is it short or long? Go. Yep. Yes. She's asking a wonderful question. She's asking, how does this work? So when you download one of the slide decks, you get all the slides in a row as the teacher. And then you would project it on the screen to your students or on your computer, and you would click through them one at a time. And each time a little more information populates onto the screen. And you can ask whatever questions you'd like, and some are prompted in the notes to the slides. That's right. Excellent question.
And the general way to get started with that is just a simple, what do you notice and what do you wonder, right? What do you observe? What do you question? And then go from there.
Then you can predict.
And then and then you predict, and then you move on to the next bit of information. What does the new information guide us to? And so do that with your first one, right? And then develop more questions. And the more you anticipate the questions and the things your students are going to say, the better those questions will get and the more integrated you can put it into your multidisciplinary lesson.
So New York Times, what's going on in this graph? What's going on in this picture? This is an example of one of the graphs that's on this website. They have a back catalog of these that goes back many, many years for the graphs and the pictures. Again, there's some content already developed for each of these graphs and pictures that prompt some general questions. Some of the questions include, again, the what do you notice and what do you wonder? Sometimes the question will be something like, how does this graph relate to you and your community? Right? So they're asking you to kind of synthesize some information out of the graph and make a connection to your own personal community. Here's another one that they often use for the graph. Create a catchy headline that captures the graph's main idea. Now we have a new skill being brought in, which is main idea, but we're dealing with graphic literacy with a science topic, right? So I mean, even here we have multidisciplinary happening. We didn't even try. We just stumbled into it. So anything like that you are interested in, you can probably find a topic related to it. I have one in my online course right now that's about music sales over the years, and it has to do with like coming off of CDs to streaming and what that's done to, dollar sales. And it's all over the world, so it's interesting to do comparisons. You can find things like that that are, again, of interest to your students and get them analyzing a chart. The pictures are usually very, they're kind of rich, right? There's lots to say about a picture. It's not just going to be somebody standing behind a podium smiling at you. There's something happening in the picture where there's going to be worth conversation about. I find the picture ones very useful to use with language learners because it's just asking basic questions and ask what you describe what you see, what do you think the person is doing, and it's good for language work. But you can also use it for writing prompts in an ABE classroom. How many of you think you might want to try slow reveal graphs or New York Times, what's going on in this graph? Somebody going to try it after they leave here? Oh, yay. That makes me happy, and I will just say, I hope what you find is that it saves you time, that you're doing good quality teaching with good quality work, but that it saves you time because you don't have to design it yourself. So give it a shot and see what you think. And I put my email on here at the end. You can tell me if it didn't work for you. We'll try to brainstorm something else. Yep. Nope, it's a website. Yep, and a bunch of, like, a back catalog of already built slide decks are available by topic. Great. Okay. So I don't know about you, but I'm used to working in front of students, and so usually after you present something, you're like, this is a really good idea, you should try this. Somebody out there's going to go, yeah, but, and then they're going to tell you why they can't do it, why it won't work. And I say that with kind of a genuine sympathy for that, because I'm a little bit of a contrarian myself, like, yeah, well, I'd like you to tell me what I should do. You know what I mean? We all kind of have that streak a little bit. So I sympathize with this. So I want to tell you maybe some of these, like, but match what's in your mind. I'm just curious. You might be thinking like, yeah, but lady, I like my lessons. I like them the way they are. Or I really like this textbook that we use, or my students really like it. Or maybe you have an approved curriculum that you have to use. Or possibly you're thinking, I already turned in all my lesson plans. I'm not redoing anything. Some of those but thoughts might be in your head. Totally fine. You do not have to redo everything. You do not have to start from scratch. Right now, we're going to do the last kind of quick, what can I do on the fly with unprepared, right? I'm just taking what I already have used or what I was given. Can I still use the multidisciplinary approach? Yes, you can. Here's how we're going to do it. So we're going to make a habit of looking at a question, a prompt, or some sort of short activity that you might find in a textbook. And we're going to start thinking about a couple of things. How can I extend this? What else could students go research? To what can we connect this? You see my little video going here? This is like the neurons making connections, right? We're going to ask ourselves to help our students make more neural pathways. So they open those up and they start moving those brains around a little bit. Every time I ask them a writing prompt, a talking prompt, I give them a short activity. Could I do something else with it too, to layer in one more skill that they need, one more context that they understand? So here's an example. I use this in my class. I have an online class that I teach. And I was teaching a couple weeks ago, and I used this. This is a very typical kind of adult education idea, right? There's a proverb from this Chinese philosopher, Lao Tzu. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. You've probably heard it before. My students had not. So they were to read and reflect. There was a little bit of silence on the Zoom. And then I asked them to do two things. To put into their own words what they think the saying means. So there's a little bit of just paraphrasing there. And why does the proverb contrast 1,000 miles and a single step? What's the purpose of that? So I'm kind of getting at a literary tactic of hyperbole. I wanted to teach that concept and use it in a way that would make sense. So that was my goal. And guess what? My students turned it into something completely different. Has this ever happened to you where you're like, we're going to cover this today, and your students are like, nope, and they take it and run? And that's exactly what happened in the Zoom. It was kind of magical and wonderful. I want to ask you, I could have asked some of these questions on purpose, right? All those same ideas we just looked at. Can Can I connect this to something else? Can I extend this to another thing? And even though my brain was not there with this activity, my students' brains were. So anybody want to guess where my students wanted to go after we talked about this? We did the thing, we did the 2 steps. Oh, no? Good guess. Try again. Anybody else want to guess? Where did they take the conversation?
Carrie in the chat says, who is Lao? Is it
Oh,
Zhu? Like,
yeah.
who is Lao Zhu?
So you know what's funny? They didn't ask, they had no curiosity at all. My group at that particular time did not want to dig into that. But that's the what else could students research piece. Anybody who had a question about that, you could say, why don't you guys go find out for me? They're all on their computers, in my class at least, so let them go dig it up. They did not want to go there. I'll give one other chance. Any other question where you think? Go ahead, shout it out. That's exactly where they went. Personal goal setting, right there. And now I should have seen that coming a mile away when I picked this proverb, but I really didn't. I was honestly thinking, let's get a little bit of, because my students often like to copy and paste, and I'm like, no, 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 put it in your own words. So I was trying to practice that skill, and also the hyperbole thing was really what I was after. They went straight to, oh, I understand what this means. I can't give up on myself just because I didn't pass that GED practice test. That was just one step out of many I'm gonna have to achieve. That is exactly where they went, and then you know what happened? Because they started talking to each other, I literally just put my mute button on. And then they all started going, you're exactly right, you can do it. And you only missed it by a couple points, didn't you? And then this conversation went, oh, and remember Latrice, she just passed her math after working at it for a year. And they were talking about her persistence. Do you know what I mean? And then this conversation is coming up organically. Now, I could have crafted a whole bunch of other questions to talk about resilience, persistence, their own personal goal setting, but I didn't even need to do it because my students were doing it for me. So I would just encourage you, even when you have small little activities like this one, to in the moment be free to think about how else could we take this and run and tie it into something that is meaningful to my students in whatever way it is. And honestly, you guys, out of that lesson, maybe I would say the extension was certainly about career awareness and kind of workplace readiness, about resilience and persistence that was happening. But honestly, it was more of a social, emotional reinforcement for my student group that night. They just needed to be encouraged. And that is also a part of our students that we should not disregard. And so when we're thinking about layering in all the multidisciplinary components that we want to, don't forget sometimes our students just need to be mentored a little bit, they need to be encouraged a little bit, and maybe that's the layer that you're missing and you want to add it in. So that's also wonderful. And here's the last thing. Anybody had a rough day in their classroom ever in adult ed? Oh my gosh, you guys, sometimes the days are rough. On the rough days, when nothing you have planned is working, when the student that you have who should be on her meds is not on her meds, when everybody is late and 3 people didn't show up at all, and on and on and on the problems go. On the rough days, you can do one thing that is verifiable, research-based. You can have your students write about whatever they have just learned. That is an evidence-based practice for helping students comprehend. This is true in math as any other subject, that if the comprehension of whatever the material is you've given them is improved when they write about it. Now, could it also be improved if they teach somebody else about the thing? Yes, but on the rough days, you cannot orchestrate somebody doing a presentation in front of the room because remember the whole room is falling apart on you. So, but you can ask them quietly to sit at their desks or on their Zoom and write for you. That is on the rough days, you can still do that. So I just like to be practical. And if some of the things I've said here today, you're thinking, that seems kind of pie in the sky, I don't know. You can always do this on the rough days. And sometimes they're rough. So just an encouragement that you're not failing if you don't have a complicated, overlapping, skilled lesson every single time. Sometimes you're struggling to get your students to even listen, and so you can always do the one thing. Okay, yes, sir. Writing across the curriculum, the writing across the curriculum, the WAC Clearinghouse. Look it up online. Thank you for sharing that. All right, there's that bit.ly link again. There's a ton of, like the Sloverville graphs, the New York Times stuff, the multidisciplinary lesson plans, the flipped classroom stuff, it's all on here. So take a look. If it's useful to you and you like some of it, please share those resources with your teachers, especially those of you who are in supporting roles and administrative roles. Share it out. It's not the be-all and end-all, but nothing is in adult ed. We're not looking for the magic cure, we're just looking for another support. So hopefully you gained some ideas and some supports. We're thankful for our online folks who are with us. There's your reflection questions that you can leave with. I always want you to have reflection time. We did a little bit of this anyway while we were here, and it was on your handout. But I just will remind you that you want to think about why might this work well for your students? And do you have one idea already that you're like, ooh, I'm going to go back to my class and I'm going to do this with some existing activity or maybe something new? So maybe you'll brainstorm those things as you're going today. That would be the goal.
Carrie in the chat says she adores that you put your mute button on with your students and just let them talk. Just, and I said to her, I said, yeah, creating community in the online classroom can be difficult, but when it happens organically like that, you just have to get out of their way.
Yep.
And let
Totally
them
true.
do it, you know? And she also, there's several comments in the chat about thanking you for encouraging them.
Good. And I encourage all of you. Thank you as you go do it all. There's my email. If it's helpful and you want to chat, I love talking to teachers like myself. So I hope you have a great conference. I hope you enjoyed the session. Have a great afternoon. Thanks for being here.